So we're going to change the oil pan gasket on this 328xi. It's an all-wheel drive car. The first thing that I've done is I've installed the engine support. Because I have to pull the entire front suspension subframe, which is where the motor actually sits on, I've had to chain the engine up and support it so I can pull that out of the car. Our oil pan gasket is leaking right out here. You can see it's a drip sitting on this bolt. I've washed it off a couple of times to make sure it's just coming from the gasket. There's no oil up above the gasket, so it's running down here, dripping onto this cross member, and then it's being spread pretty much everywhere on the car through driving. But to get the oil pan off, this is our oil pan right here, I need to pull the entire suspension subframe. So that's pretty much all of these pieces. I'm going to need to pull the axles because the front differential on these cars literally runs through the center of the oil pan. So we can see one axle's kind of up in here, and then we have the front differential, which is bolted to the side of the oil pan. So all of this is going to need to come out. I've chained it up top, and so now I'm just going to start disassembling, taking all the brackets off and getting this subframe out. So I'm going to drain the front differential, but a quick tip. Always want to make sure you undo the fill bolt before you loosen the drain bolt. That does for two reasons. One, it makes it drain easier because it allows more air into the unit. But two, if you pull the drain bolt and for some reason you can't get the fill bolt out, now you can't operate the differential. So you always want to make sure you crack this one first. So the front cross member's out. It really wasn't too bad. Everything kind of stayed where it was supposed to stay. The motor didn't move at all. And now I'm just going to kind of try and pull. I think I can snake the oil pan out around our steering rack. I really don't want to disconnect it if I can get away with it. Maybe what I might have to do is drop the tie rod ends off just to turn it 90 degrees. But I'm going to keep going and get the rest of the pieces off so I can get the oil pan down. I think we're pretty much about clear right now to go ahead and drop the pan down. All I got to do is undo all of the bolts, and I think I've got enough clearance to where it should just drop straight down. So I've got the oil pan is all cleaned up. I've got our new bolts came in. These are an aluminum stretch bolt. BMW says one-time use only, though I think you probably could, if you have to, reuse. I just didn't want to take the chance. I've also got all of the engine cleaned up, all of the suspension cleaned up. I've degreased everything so when I go back in, I'm not going to get covered in oil. To hold the gasket on, I'm using a little bit of trans prep, which is just a low melt grease, and that'll hold the gasket in place so I can slide the oil pan up and into place. I've also gone ahead and cleaned up all of the other component pieces that are going to go in. So I degreased and washed the front suspension piece. I've cleaned all of the axles, the anti-roll bar, and also the front drive shaft. I've also got the plastic pieces from up top. I've just kind of laid everything out so as I start to go back together, I can grab those parts as needed and get them back onto the car. Okay, I need a bolt. Go. I'm just going to start all the bolts first. That way I can move the oil pan and the gasket around as needed. You don't want to just put one in and tighten it up all the way. because more than likely it will cause you not to be able to get all the rest of the bolts in. So now I've got the oil pan and all the screws in. I've just got them snugged down. I'm going to go through, and these are tightened in 2 stages. I'm going to tighten them first to 8 Newton meters, and I'm just going to work my way around the pan. And then we're going to do the torque angle method. So the short screws, which is the majority of the screws, are a 90-degree torque angle, and the long screws are a 180-degree torque angle. So to do the torque angle, I can't really fit my torque angle gauge up into here because it's all kind of irregular shapes. But because it's a 90-degree torque, what I'm going to do is just get my ratchet on, lined up, and then I'm just going to make a 90-degree twist and then stop. Now I want to keep going all the way around the pan, so I'm going to take my Sharpie and I'm just going to mark the bolt that it's been tightened. This is because with a normal torque wrench you could come back around and recheck your torques, but with a torque angle there's no way to recheck it. So as I torque each one, I'm just going to go ahead and mark it with a Sharpie. So now I'm just going to go ahead and basically reassemble the underside of the car. I'm going to put the differential on, get the axles back in, and work at getting the subframe back up and supporting the engine. So we finished up our oil pan project, taken the car for a quick test drive, lifted it back up, made sure that we don't have any leaks, everything looks good, everything's clean and dry, topped off our oil level after our road test. The job of doing the oil pan is not an expensive one in the terms of parts. We had about $100 worth of materials in the entire job. It is labor intensive. None of it is particularly hard, but it does take a lot of time to get all of the pieces out of the way to get the oil pan on and off. A couple of tools that you can't do the job without. The biggest one being the engine support piece that we had going across the top of the engine. Because when that subframe comes out, the motor mounts are unsupported, and without that, the engine is going to drop. Otherwise, really pretty simple. You could do it without a lift. Could do it on jack stands. It would be a lot harder. The other tools that you're going to need are going to be your torque wrenches. You really need to have those both for the front wheel bearings and for the oil pan. But take care of it. Don't let it sit there and drip. Deferred maintenance is one of the biggest killers of all cars out there. So I'd like to say thanks for watching. If you liked the video, please hit the like button. If you'd like to see more of these, please hit the subscribe button. We would love to hear from you in the comments section, so please leave a comment and we'll be happy to get back to you. Also, we can kind of preview our next BMW project is going to be our 2013 535X Drive that's coming up. That one's going to have the motor coming out, and that is a direct response of deferred maintenance. So keep in touch and keep looking, and we'll have that one out in the next couple of weeks.